Hello everyone. Welcome back to Alteryx Tutorials. I am Mark Thompson with Watermark Data. This session is going to be a re-record of weekly challenge number 93. For some reason my audio did not make it onto the recording, and so I am having to go back and redo it. Apologies for those who took a look at the other one and couldn't hear what I was saying. In this challenge, what we've got is pumpkin production. Pumpkin production throughout the U.S. for a number of years, from 2000 on through like 2016 or 17, something like that. And we want to know which states produce the most pumpkins, what's their average, and how much, who makes the most each year, and who makes the fewest, the minimum, the least each year, and how that differs from their average. Let's go ahead and get on into it. First things first, you can see I've used my color coding to break up what we're doing. First section is going to be input and isolating the data. Then we're going to combine and organize that data. And then we're going to do some calculations for the yearly rank and the differences. And then finally, we're going to export this. And as always, I use kind of a green for export. And this I don't even know what you would call this color. Kind of a teal, I guess, to import. To start off with, we have two sets of data. One with all of the data by year and by state with an ANSI code. So we're going to have to translate that into what does that code really mean? And then what that pumpkin production is. First thing we're going to do, actually, why don't I come up here and run this real quick? And boom, runs in about 2 seconds. You can see we've got this pumpkins. First thing we're going to do with that piece of data is we're going to clean it up and look down here in this one. When I click on the cleanup data, those go away. And next we're going to select here. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the data type on a couple of these. Next, let's go down here and take a look at our other data. This other data is in a kind of a messy format. You can see it's separated with pipe delimiters, and we're going to want to break that out into the information that it's in there. So the first thing we do is we do this text columns, and we're going to use a pipe delimiter, and we're going to say we're going to break it into 4 columns. So we've got the state, and that's the code. That's what we're going to match up on. We've got the state short, the abbreviation, and then we've got the state name and some other codes that go along with each state for this. Next, as you can see, this first row has the headers, and we're going to take and we're going to use the dynamic rename. We've done this before. We take the dynamic rename and we come up here and we say, take field names from the first row of data. When we do that, now we've got the state and the code and the state name up here in the top. Next, for those of you who have watched enough of my tutorials, you know I like to keep my data clean, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get rid of the columns that I don't need. So I'm really just keeping the state and the abbreviation. Next, we're going to combine and we're going to organize our data. So we have this data over here, yearly by pumpkins. So next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to say, what is the average? We're going to calculate the average for it way back here because we want to leverage that as we go along. And when we compare it to what the minimum produced and the maximum produced compared to the average, let's go ahead and figure that out right now. So as you can see, when we do that, we now have a state average volume down here by its state code. Let's go ahead and combine that back with our data here. So we've got this. We've got this. Now we're going to combine it. We don't need, as you can see over here, we don't need that state ANSI code twice. So we've got the year, the state code, the pumpkins, and what's the average for that state, whatever that state, in this case 6, happens to be. Next thing we want to do is we want to join over here to our other set of input data, this stuff here. And we've got the state code and we've got the abbreviation. We're going to join on the ANSI code, and you can see this one is just state. We don't need that state and ANSI code, so we're not going to we're not going to have that as an output. Now we can see the state code. In this case, it's California, and all of the years for California. Next thing, let's go ahead and give this a record ID. So we hit that with a record ID, and we've got the year and state and all the same information. Now we're going to break our streams into two, and one of them is going to be a max, and one of them is going to be a min. So we're going to be calculating the year and the rank differences. So we do that, we sort. In this case, we're sorting by year and state volume in descending order. So the output on this goes by the year, so 2000, and then the state in the descending volume. So you can see that for 2000, Illinois was the most, then California, New York, Pennsylvania, etc. Down here, we're going to do, in a sense, kind of the exact opposite. We're going to take and we're going to sort by year again. So it's still 2000, but this time we're going to be in ascending order. So the first one that you see here by year is the minimum that was produced. The next two formulas are again the same, except in this case, so we're ranking by year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for the year, and then notice over here we group by year, and this is just a rank. So we count it up in order until we hit the next year, 2001. So in this case, we're wanting the max, and so it's descending. So when you take a look at the max for 2001, again, it's Illinois. This time, California is in second, and New York's in third, and then Pennsylvania. And right on down the line for all 112 records, and year by year by year by year, you can see max rank year 1, so it's Illinois. Down here, we've got the inverse. We're still doing this. We're grouping by year, and we're doing the rank. But because we had sorted it, the first one in sort order in this case is the minimum. So rank 1 is the minimum on this row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For year 2000, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, starting from the bottom up and going ascending because that was the first thing we did. Next, we're going to go ahead and join. We're going to combine these. So we've got a join here. And now we're saying we're going to join it. We're going to join it by year. So we've got the year over here, and now we're down, as you can see, to 17 records, one for each year. And what we have here is we've got the max state code, and who knew? Who knew that Illinois was such a pumpkin-producing place? Every single year, they seem to be ranked #1 because we filtered, and I forgot to say this, we filtered here. We had these ranks. We filtered out for only max rank 1 on the maximums, and we filtered out for year min rank 1 and the minimums. Then we joined them together, and we were just talking about it. So these are all the ones, and these are all the ones, but this is the max, and this is the min. Every single year, we've got Illinois as the top pumpkin producer. And here is what that average that we went ahead and figured out way back at this little block here. Now we have that come into play. And now we also see the state with the minimum for each given year and what that minimum volume was. And then we also, for Michigan, this was the average. So this is the average, and the minimum state production for that year is different than their average. Next thing we're doing is we're going to do a couple of calculations. We're going to say, okay, let's go ahead on these first two and say, what's the max production compared to their average? What's the min production compared to their average volume? And here we get a delta. We get 2 deltas, and we actually have 2 more formulas. I'm going to leave them hidden for a moment. And you can see this is the difference. Their max, when they maxed out, that was a lot different. Well, in this case, actually, their max was lower. And in some cases, it's lower. Their max volume is lower than their average volume for that given year. Most years it's higher, and even though they were still, Illinois in this case, was the max producer, they were still under their average volume. And I created some charts over here to show you some of these. And then I did this exact same thing, but I said, what's the percentage difference? Now, here's where this is a little bit of an extra for number 16. I created these 3 reports. The first one is the basic table, right? Here's what the output looks like. This tells you all of those things that I was just showing you. By the way, the percentage differences are a little bit that I added to this challenge as well. And as I said earlier, you can see that Illinois is the top producer, ranked number 1 in the state every single year from 2000 to 16. And what the average that they produce in those last 17 years. Here is the lowest producer. Here's what that production was for that low producer that year. And here it compares to how they do on average. How does Michigan, what is the average production from Michigan? And it's 850,000. That year in 2000, they had a 704 production that year, right? So they're 150K under what they normally do, or down 18%. So this is one table and one report. Here's a couple of other bonus ones for you. And I said, okay, let's go ahead and take a look. I create an interactive chart that says, what does that look like? So blue is the max variance, and orange is the minimum variance, the delta. And you can see the minimum is got a lot less variance on an absolute basis. Now that would make a lot of sense, right? If you're only producing 800,000, you're not going to have a variance of 1.5 million. If you're the max producer producing 3 million on your average, then you have a bad year, then you could be at 2.5 million. So you can see what that variance is compared to the max average, what that variance is. But absolutes, when you look at them on a chart like this, it can be a bit deceiving. And that's why I actually went ahead and tacked on those 2 formulas that I mentioned, which are the percentages. And let's go ahead and take a look at what that variance looks like when you're talking a percentage of the minimum, a percentage of the maximum versus an absolute value. And you can see 2015 apparently was not a good production year. It's well below average for the max producer percentage-wise, but it's also well off of average even for the minimum producer. So it makes a lot of sense that most of this chart is below the average, because generally if you're the worst producer, you had an off year and it's not your best year. So this is comparing to the average for you versus everybody. All right. That was a little bit extra that I tossed in there. You can take a look. We can pop these charts open here real quick. We can take a look at the configuration. And we've got, I gave it a line of min delta variance and called it a line. And I used the year for my x-axis, and I used the minimum average delta for my y-axis. And if you go here and take a look at this interactive chart for the percentages, I put it together in the exact same way. Okay, that'll wrap it up. I am Mark Thompson. This has been Watermark Data. You've been watching Alteryx tutorials. If you like what you see, please hit like, please hit share, and always we welcome your comments and feedback. Have a great day, everybody.